If you have used my Phonics diagnostic tracking spreadsheet previously, this one functions in many of the same ways. We'll briefly go over some of the differences in recording fluency data, but it will be super quick and easy for you to get started with. If this spreadsheet system is brand new to you, don't worry. I'm going to talk you through each component of it. I know a lot of people get overwhelmed with Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel, but I've really tried my best to make this as simple and straightforward to use. So beginning with each of the tabs on the bottom, the Names tab and the Test Names tab are where you personalize things for you and your students. And then these colored tabs are connected to your assessment system. So we have beginning, middle, and end of the year data, and then progress monitoring. Right now it is set up to be in that order, but you are able to drag these. So for example, if you give 3 progress monitorings in between each of the assessments, you can drag that over so it is set up in the way that matches your cycle, or you can leave them there. We're going to go through each set of tabs and give an explanation of each one and how to use it. So the Names tab is where you enter your student names. You have to remember you are not able to insert rows or delete rows on this tab, as it will mess up the formula for everything ongoing. The way this spreadsheet functions and the way the individual student pages down here are built are with formulas pulling the data from the tabs that you do enter your information. So as soon as you change a row, it messes up the formatting on everything. First thing to do is to go through and add in your students' names. You type right over what's already in there. Once you have your student names entered, what is remaining is spots for students you may not have. I personally like to delete the next row just to give myself a visual that these are the students I have and these are spots for remaining students. I have added additional rows so you can have up to 40 students' data in one spreadsheet. But because we cannot add or delete rows, I've tried to give you enough for students that move in. Unfortunately, you can't put them in alphabetically because of the formatting, so they'll have to be added to the bottom. So this blank spot kind of just lets you know this is where you can enter it. I choose not to delete the rest of them just as a quick visual that these are the only spots you can use, but that blank there helps give me that reminder. If you don't want to get confused by having these rows available, you can hide them, and so you can access them later in the future if you need them. So you would select all of them on this column, right click and click hide rows, and now you no longer see them. You could also do that with that top one if you wanted. This row, because of the way I hid it, is not able to be pulled later, so perhaps you don't want to do that, so you know exactly what rows you can use. That choice is really yours. Here is where you will enter the expectation for words correct per minute for your grade level with your assessment system. A few different assessment systems have slightly different norms. Not everybody uses the Hasbrook and Tyndall scale. And because this is for any grade level, I have not pre-built the data. So right now it's showing 80, 120, and 150, just so I could show you what the graph looks like. But you will need to come in and enter the specifics for your grade. Most assessment systems don't give benchmarks for progress monitoring, so whatever you have at the beginning of the year, you will want to continue through your progress monitoring cycles by adding that same number in. The graph shown on the student information page will go ahead and show an increase from the beginning to the middle to the end, even though this says 80. This is also customizable, so if you only do 2 assessment systems here, you can go ahead and delete this information and it will not mess anything up. Just don't delete the row. And then you can come through here and change this number to a 3 and a 4 and delete this one if you would like. Once you have set this up for your names, if you want to get it out of the way, you can go ahead and hide this tab. So you can click here, click Hide Sheet, and it is gone. You will see they've given you a reminder that you can use the menu to unhide it. That menu is right here. So you could click here, click to go back to your names, and it re-pops it back out for you. The next tab is the Test Names tab, and this is where you enter the specific assessments you are giving your students. This is for the phonics portion only. It is pre-set up based on the quick phonics screener that I have. So what you are using, or if you're using a different assessment system, it may not match. Each of the information in row 1 is set up based on that assessment, but you can change each of these columns. We have letter names, letter sounds, CVC nonsense, CVC in context. Then we have blends and digraphs, nonsense and blends and digraphs in context. So for example, if you don't do blends and digraphs together, your assessment looks a little bit different. You can come in here and change it to just digraphs nonsense, digraphs in context, and then put your blends here, blends in context. That means that yes, you would need to then move the text for each of these because again, you cannot insert columns, but it does not take too long and then it transfers to every student's page. So anything you do here will transfer over. There are 6 additional columns than I had in my previous version. Hopefully there are enough spots to cover what your assessment might look like. The top row is for each of the test names, and then row 2 is where you put the point values for each of those assessments. So letter names, of course, is 26. Letter sounds is 26, but perhaps you just do letter names and sounds together, so that could be 52. And let's say you change this to something else. I'm going to just call it test so you can see how it works, and I'm going to make this one out of 15. Any changes you make here will transfer over, so this is a spot to make them. Let's say you want to add an additional assessment. We're just going to call it 4 syllables 2 to give you an idea. If you are going to be using the spreadsheet year after year, you might want to change this test names tab first, then click and make a copy so you don't have to make these changes to the spreadsheet every single year. Your master will then have those changes and you're working off of an adjustment. Once you have made those changes, you likely don't need the test names tab anymore, so you can go ahead and hide this sheet. And again, you can access it if you need it later. Now we have the first test administration sheet. I'm going to briefly explain each of the features here and how to use it. So in the top left corner is the name of the assessment, so it matches what is on the bottom here. Again, you can rename this tab if you would like. It says boy, but maybe you want to call it BEG for beginning of the year. Whatever you write here, however, will change in the student information pages. So you want it to be specific so it makes sense to you later. Instead of beginning of the year, maybe you change it to BOY and give it August. Or BOY, August 2025. It's really whatever makes the most sense to you. Up at the top are all of those assessments that we updated on that names tab. So you can see letter names changed to 52. Test is just test with 15. And you can see that we have that 4 syllables 2 added. You might see there is a whole lot of red here, and that's because the calculation for this spot, the student's percent on that subtest, is automatically calculated because there is a point value here. Because we didn't add a point value for 4 syllables, that is whited out. If you are not giving every student every subtest, you can error out the score so it doesn't look like that student scored a 0. I'll show you what I mean as I enter some data. I am entering the score and hitting enter, and it is sliding down. But let's say I am looking at one individual student and I want to keep going for that student, which is likely what you would be doing. Instead of hitting enter, if you click tab, it'll send you to that percent column. Make sure you don't accidentally enter data here and override the formula, so you'll want to hit tab 2 times. It just takes a while to get your brain used to hitting tab 2 times, but then it makes it quick and easy for you to add that student's data. So let's say Adam starts falling off in his proficiency, and so I don't keep going with my assessment after this spot. So if that is the case, I may want to error out the data so it doesn't keep saying 0. I can do that by hitting a minus sign, and it shows value. I could do the bar key, which is above the enter, which does that. I can do a slash, which also errors it out and shows value, shows that it is not functioning correctly. And that makes it a little easier to see that this student didn't get a 0, they just did not actually give that information. If you are not giving each of the additional assessment columns, you can hide them on each of the assessment tabs so they are not showing up. You can do that by clicking the column title holding it as you drag to the last column you would like to hide. Then you right click and click hide columns, and then they are gone. If for some reason you wanted to access them again, you can see the little arrows here. You can click them and they will come right back. I'm going to go ahead and re-hide them. And here we have our columns set up for our fluency assessment. Because this spreadsheet is designed to be used with any grade level, there's not real color coding that happens here as it does for the other columns, which we will go back and talk about the color coding in a minute. But this is set up to color code for accuracy with an expectation that students are meeting 95% accuracy. The accuracy column is auto-calculated based on what you enter here. Fluency words read correctly is the words correct per minute. Let's say this student read 84 out of 90 words. We enter that here and it calculates that accuracy rate and color codes it. 90 to 95 is a yellow, 95 and higher is green, and below 90 is red. That is a little bit low, so if you want to change it for your building or district's expectations, you can click just one of the cells here, come to Format and Conditional Formatting, and you are able to change the point values here. I would not recommend changing any of the arrangements because it's built on a hierarchy, but if you wanted to make this, say, have 93%, then anything yellow, you would say 93 instead of 90. You would keep value is less than 95 here, and then you would change this to value is less than or equal to 93. Again, you might say, but 93 is yellow because of the hierarchy that is there above it, and it will pull from this before this. If you want to change the color codings for the others, you would click just one of the cells here. You can come to Format Conditional Formatting, and you can make these changes as well. The way it is currently set up is that if the value is greater than or equal to 80, it's green, 60 to 80 is yellow, and below 60 is red. Some places use much more stringent numbers like 70 or 75. I know in my district it's like that. So you can come in here and just change that number and it will change every one of those columns. But it is important to note when you change it, it's just for this tab. Don't forget, though, that your phonics coloring is set up differently than your fluency coloring, so you will have to change both on each tab. Scrolling down, we can see those students that we don't have in our class. I always prefer to hide those rows just so they're out of the way. So again, I select the rows, I click hide rows, and they are gone. There was a blank left underneath my last student, Zeroni. And then at the bottom, the spreadsheet does some auto calculations based on the information you add. It counts the number of students that have scores on each subskill. It counts the number of students who have scored at least an 80%, and then it calculates what is the percent of students that were assessed that mastered that skill. So just to be clear, if a student didn't take that subtest, then their lack of assessment isn't calculated here. So your percent mastered is only based on the students that actually took that subtest. So your score would be lower for the students you did not give that subtest to. Each of the rest of the data tabs functions in exactly the same way as the beginning of the year one I showed you. Again, you are able to change this information if you would like. Any changes to conditional formatting or hiding rows you will have to do again on these tabs. Now let's look at the student information sheets. Each of these sheets that are numbered at the bottom correspond to your student name. So this was student number 1. So Adam's data is going to be on tab 1. You can go ahead and rename this if it is helpful. So I'm going to click rename, and I'm going to label it AA for that last name. Anything you entered on the other tabs gets pulled over here. So remember how we changed the title of beginning of year to this? It went ahead and changed it here as well, along with us changing that to test and adding that 4 syllables too. Remember, we canceled out this assessment information instead of showing it as a 0. This way it shows that that student did not take that test. Remember, on the assessment tabs, we did not use each of the assessments. So if you want to hide these to make it clear that you're looking at just the assessment you did, again, you can select those rows, right click and click hide, and now you see that student's specific information. We have the phonics information at the top and then the fluency information we entered. Any changing you did for colorings on these tabs did not transfer over to the individual student tabs. You would, yes, unfortunately, have to go through and change that conditional formatting coloring for both the percentage here and the percentages here. I wish I could make one clear coloring for everybody that worked for everybody, but unfortunately, we vary quite a bit. It would take a little bit of time to change each of those, but each time it's only 2 spots per student page. So you could click conditional formatting, again, click in that cell, change it. It changes it in each of the testing groups, and then you would again change that accuracy in the same way, and it would change it for each of those testing groups. That column will stay there, so if you click to a new tab, you are able to then just click right back where you were before, click a second one, and keep going. So it will take a little bit of time, but if you do it that first time, and again on your master, then you have it forever. Going back to Adams, because that's where we put information, and hid those rows. The top has all of the benchmarking timelines, so beginning, middle, and end of the year are together along with the graph. As I mentioned before, we're not able to color code for the automaticity rate or the words correct per minute. Instead, we have our student scores here and the coloring just based on accuracy. However, because of the way you set up your information on the names tab for the oral reading fluency expectations, this graph gets calculated with both the expectation and the student's actual performance. You can see a trend line is built in here, along with what the expectations actually are. So these go straight across, but you can see kind of based on where that beginning is, where that trend would be. The student's information is then plotted in relation to that. So 80 was the initial expectation, so it shows that 84 is slightly above and listed here. You're also able to click and see what that student's information is in relation. This graph updates each time you add in data, so will always be active. The testing information at the bottom is the exact same as it is on the top. It just goes through progress monitoring 1 through 6, so you can slide over and see those last ones. If you wanted to change the arrangement of this, so for example, if you wanted to say, this is beginning of the year, this is progress monitoring 1, this is progress monitoring 2. You are able to do that just by changing on the correct tab that information. Middle of the year is on top. If you wanted to make this progress monitoring 1, you can change it here and here. Then change each of those respective ones. It would just need to take some thought process as you lay it out. You could then do middle of the year here, or progress monitoring 3 here, middle of the year here, and then your last progress monitorings before the end of the year at the bottom. You would just then want to make sure you change that information here as well. Again, because this is auto-populated, you need to be careful and not add or delete any rows on any of the other tabs, because everything here is pulled directly from those other tabs. If you want to print this to send it home with parents or have it printed with you at an RTI, MTSS, or case conference meeting, you could have it pulled up here. If you wanted to print it, if you go to File Print, it is, on my current one, it is defaulting to fit to width, putting everything there quite small. You can change it to fit to height, where it fits everything onto one page as much as it can, and then you can see 5 and 6 down here. This might be helpful until you're at the very end of the year. It kind of gives you a quick look on a one-page version. You also could have it fit to just one page like we started with, which is the same as that fit to width. Alternatively, you can change it instead of printing the whole sheet to just print certain information. So for example, let's say you're just going to send this home during your benchmarking timelines. So you can select these rows, you can come back to File Print, and instead of it being current sheet, you can click selected cells and then it just prints this information. Or if it's mid-year and you just want to do the beginning and middle of the year and those first little bit of progress monitoring, you could select this. Again, go back to File Print and selected cells, and you can see, again, it's just this information. It looks like it doesn't quite fit on one page, but if you click Fit to Page or Fit to Height, then it will clearly fit on that one page without being super small. Because each of these tabs is auto-calculated and gives you a quick look at your students' data, these individual student pages are super helpful for case conferences, report card time, or RTI MTSS meetings, whereas the assessment tabs are very nice for looking at your data and making instructional decisions on which students fit best together in small groups. I hope you find this spreadsheet helpful and easy to use. If you have suggestions, comments, or questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I will do my best to respond to you as quickly as I can. Typically, I only update the spreadsheet once per summer, and I don't tackle that during the school year, but I am happy to take suggestions for my next update. Let me know how I can help.